Order and welcome everyone to the Coeur d'Alene School District 271 Board Workshop of February 5th, 2024. This meeting is being recorded but not live streamed, and so it will be online within a day or two. So would everyone please stand, and together we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to introduce everyone this afternoon, and so starting at my far right, filling in today is Ms. Donna Sparron, who is the backup clerk of the board, Dr. Sean Hawker, our superintendent, Ms. Leslie Berkey, vice chair, Ms. Heather Tenbrink, board member, Ms. Allie Anderton, board member, Mr. Jimmy McAndrew, board member, and I'm Rebecca Smith, board chair. Public comment will not be taken at this meeting. It is a workshop. Comments, though, regarding today's topics especially, we would welcome them at trustees@cdaschools.org or in writing through the clerk. Thank you. Our agenda is in front of us. Is there a motion to approve today's agenda as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Today's agenda is approved. There is before us then a consent agenda up for action, and on there is a bid approval, website design, and a dual credit program agreement with North Idaho College. So we'll start with a motion first. Is there a motion to approve today's consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on any of those topics today? All right, hearing none, then all in favor of today's consent agenda? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, consent agenda passes as presented. We've got four main topics today up for discussion. The first is our 2024 board meeting schedule, and presented we had a couple of options. One of the things that we did following our last board meeting is that we went back and we Miss Southwick kind of dialed in, especially when we would receive our packets, the time frame in between there, so that we'd have enough time for review, so the community could review, so that we could get questions back to us prior to when we actually met. Okay, and so in there is two different proposals, keeping essentially the second Monday for our board meetings, but then there's a couple options there regarding our workshop dates for the year. And so is there any input on those or questions? Any thoughts on where people are at with any of those proposals?
So I know that Ms. Southwick had a question about July, just because it's district office staff won't be working the 4th and the 5th, right? So, yeah.
That's correct. But it's still, I don't anticipate it being a problem, because if our goal is to get the board packet posted and live by now Tuesdays at 5 o'clock, right? That would give you Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and Thursday night to approve the packet. The 4th, I believe, is on a Thursday. So you would need to probably try to look it over before then. And then no. Let me back up and take everything I just said away. In this specific case, we would just treat it like we do today. So if you had questions and could get them to us before, as early as possible, and we could get them answered by Wednesday night, we'll do our best. But ultimately, on that specific week with that goofy schedule, we would just still anticipate questions due by Sunday at midnight. We'll post them for Monday morning, and we'll just do that one, because it's kind of a one-off.
So every other month we would.
But most other months,
So questions by
Thursday at midnight.
evening.
Yep.
And then-
If you got questions to the district by Thursday at midnight, we'll have them answered to you by Friday. And no, let me back that up. You'd get them to us by Thursday at midnight, and then we'd give it to you Friday by noon like normal, and then you would have Friday night all day and essentially Saturday and Sunday and even Monday up until the board meeting to review those answers and be ready for your board meeting on Monday.
Which also then gives the community more time to send us just questions. I would lift up one observation as I thought about this in moving maybe our workshops to Tuesday. One thing is that it does give people, if they have a harder time getting here on a, typically we don't do public comment, but if they have problems getting here on a Monday, they could come on a Tuesday. Although we can always have public comment through writing as well. So, does anyone have a thought? I'm really open to when. I mean,
my only reasoning for option one is because there's just more school-related activities on Tuesdays, so that makes it more difficult for students or students' parents to be here for workshops. But aside from that, I think I think the Mary Ann and the administration have kind of met us where we needed to
yeah,
be met.
absolutely.
And our hope on those, if you do decide to go on Tuesday, we can control those agendas, first of all. If there was ever a special something going on that night and we wanted to schedule a different time, we can always adjust and do that. So I think that also allows you to have Tuesdays as a potential option. So it's really your pleasure. And remember, tonight, you're not making any decisions. You're just discussing things. We'll have the formal calendar presented to you at next Monday's regular board meeting, and that's when you'll formally vote on whatever it is. But we want to have a conversation tonight to see what you'd prefer and what might work.
Would it make sense to push that July meeting off to the following week on the 15th? Or is there a reason why we wouldn't want to do that? That would allow us to avoid that crunch with the 4th and the 5th.
I mean, that's essentially what Ms. Southwick did with November as well. She moved it to the 3rd Monday. Oh, because the 11th. Yeah. So,
Right.
yeah.
That might be a possibility. The budget would be done by then, so certainly could be a possibility.
Maybe let's make a note for that for Ms. Southwick and see if she sees something
Yeah. Okay.
different or whatever, since her head was deeply into this.
Well, she's the one that brought up to me that there was the conflict. So I think she's
Yeah, with that 4th, 5th, July 4th and stuff coming right before, we just wanted to make sure you guys had time to review the packet and stuff, and for us to make sure we can get it posted and get it out. But we'll get it posted, no problem.
Thinking of the public too, a lot of people are headed out of town for that weekend. It may not even be back by that Monday.
Sure.
So I know a lot of times I like to be out of town past that Monday.
All right, so maybe Ms. Southwick could relook at that. Maybe we adjust that July date and otherwise kind of go with maybe option one as our schedule here. And then that would come back for vote on Monday. Are you good with that? Okay, terrific. All right, thank you, and thanks to Ms. Southwick, especially for digging into that. Appreciate it. All right, we're going to go on then to our assessment update then. Well, we can just take them. We'll pass them down. Thanks, Heather.
A little more detailed. It's just hard to get that all on the screen.
Okay.
This just represents the
Are these all the same? Okay,
packets.
they're all the same.
All the same.
Oh, it's the same thing. Yeah. Okay.
So good afternoon. The assessment update today is dealing with our elementary school iReady and iStation. So what we'll do today is I'll try to provide an understanding for you of what those two assessments are, And what they measure will compare our, I didn't do spring, but I have that ready for you if you want to see that. I didn't put it in this presentation because it got a little tricky with cohorts from last year, but I remember last year at this meeting, you were asking for, what does that look like? What did that look like last spring? So I'm happy to forward that slide to you in board notes if you'd like to see that. It's just kind of comparing what our end game might look like and how far along are we on track to meeting that goal. So would that be something you'd like to see?
I think I'm seeing head nods. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I just want to caution you that if you're looking at kindergarten last spring, you'd be looking at first grade students this fall. So I started talking through that with myself and thought, I don't know, that's kind of hard to translate on the screen. So, and then answer any questions that you have today. So iStation is our state reading indicator. So every school has K through 5 students who access iStation, although in Idaho, our reading indicator state test is only K3. But all of our students use this as a benchmark fall, winter, spring. It gives us a good idea just of where they're at in regards to their reading across the board. It's an early screener, it's diagnostic, so teachers can dig down and really see which areas are needing improvement and which ones the kids are at benchmark in. It's mandatory for our kiddos in the fall and in the spring in grades K through 3. And winter is optional, but it's nice. And you'll see most diagnostics, we want to see those 3 different data points for a kiddo just so we can see them along the way. So we use it to screen and identify kiddos who are at risk. It helps teachers plan their instruction for students. So if they see a whole group who's looking like maybe they're not meeting a goal area, they can plan instruction specifically around that. Helps them determine interventions that might be needed for kids, and then just track their growth along the way. And we send these out electronically to all parents, fall, winter, and spring as well. These are the things that it measures in each grade level. It's important to note that fluency is not used in determining their overall reading ability index on this measure. So you'll see that you'll get a score for that, oral reading fluency, so kids do practice that on this test, and we do get feedback around that. It's just not used as part of their overall score when we're reporting out whether they've met benchmark or not.
Do we have other assessments within the class for fluency?
Every
kind of
teacher you
important.
see will have
Yeah.
an oral reading fluency. We in the district also K-8 use AimsWeb, which is a normed assessment that's about, I think for reading fluency, it's about a minute. It's very short, but we're really looking for, can kids read at a rate that allows them to comprehend, that they're not stopping at every word and sounding it out because you lose understanding as you're doing that. But yes.
Thanks.
And particularly, we use this to, teachers will see that oral reading fluency, and if they see that it's concerning, then they'll definitely dive back in with that student with some additional assessment. It's computer adaptive and it is digital. So it does, in some areas, require that we go a little deeper. But it's just a nice, just a benchmark, just a toe in the water as we move along. And really for teachers, knowing that in the spring, this is what the state uses to determine whether our kiddos are at grade level. It's nice that we can use it all year long with kids and try to remove that barrier of, is it a 5-year-old who can't use a mouse yet, or is it that they're not able to read? So part of the reason that we use it all year long is just for that piece too, trying to determine. But yes, we have a strong multi-tiered system of support here. So this is our overall reading growth. You may have gotten a slide in your packet that was incorrect. This has been corrected. I believe that I transposed the tier 1 and tier 3 in the fall in your previous packet. So if you notice that change, I caught it and moved it. That's a big difference between the red and the green, and we want that to be correct. So fall, you can see that 62% of our kiddos were proficient according to this assessment, and by winter we're up at about 71, which is great. It's what we want to see. We want to see the green getting larger and the yellow and the red getting smaller, and we do see that. Any questions?
I guess, how does this track with previous years, and is this better on track?
It's similar, and I have longitudinal data for this that I can also add to your notes if you'd like. And just a reminder to everybody that anything that goes in notes goes also on my CDA schools, so anyone can see that as well. But yeah, I can show you longitudinal growth on this. I would say it's not particularly different than any other year. It's about the same. Our iReady assessment is the same type of assessment, but for mathematics. This also has a K-5 diagnostic that helps us identify strengths and areas of needs for kiddos. We also administer it 3 times a year. It has the same window as iStation. It's used to provide a screening tool to identify kids who might be at risk in some areas in math. Teachers use it to plan instruction. So again, you can group students in this tool by skills that they may need more practice or enrichment with. It helps us determine any interventions that we might need for students, and then also just to keep track of growth in different areas. iReady is a diagnostic that's connected to our curriculum right now. So Curriculum and Associates for Math in K-5. So this is their diagnostic measure. So it's another way that we can kind of see how we're doing within our core curriculum.
And there's no state requirement for.
Heather, can I backtrack a little bit on the iStation? Is there any alignment with the iStation and our new curriculum that we just adopted for K-5 ELA?
That's a great question. I mean, they're all aligned to Common Core standards or to Idaho State standards.
Which are Common Core standards.
Which are Common Core. Yes, I know, but we try
Okay,
to.
but because you're saying that we're seeing similar results, I was just curious where, with our new ELA, if we've noticed any, and I guess we haven't seen any change.
I don't know
yet.
that we would yet,
Yeah, it
to
might
be
too
honest.
soon.
Probably too soon. Yeah. I think teachers are getting used to using that curriculum, and I would
Takes
say
time.
it typically takes us sometimes up to 3 years to
Yeah.
really see the difference. AG, for your help. Yes.
Good evening, trustees. Just to sort of address what Heather is saying, we didn't do any kind of study between the correlation of benchmark to iStation, but we did look at the correlation of benchmark to the ISAT and found that the standards very much supported how kids would be tested on the ISAT, and made sure that it was not only guaranteed curriculum, but also viable, meaning that all of the standards could be taught prior to the actual testing or assessment. And that was one of the reasons why benchmark was selected, was because they found that it was very, we were able to reach all those standards prior to ISAT testing.
one more note about iStation is that the 24-25 year is the last year that we're contracted to use iStation for our Idaho Reading Indicator. So this spring and summer, the state will be looking at, well, they'll put it out to bid, and we'll be looking at RFPs to determine if we want to stay with that or if they'll change that, which is always, you know, good if we need a different assessment, hard when we're trying to track data and kids and keep it consistent. But we'll know, we'll use it next year regardless though, and then we'll know by then whether we're going to switch to a different type of assessment. So these are the things that iReady measures from K through 5. All of the scores can be broken down by each of these domains, and there's much more information at the little link at the bottom that I shared. I like the fact that from K to 5, we can really see that changing data in each domain as they go along. Some of the things that teachers talk to us about at times is that our scope and sequence, how we choose to teach things throughout the year, doesn't always align directly with the assessment. However, this assessment too is computer adaptive. So a student taking this test could see items from any of these domains and also could be across several grade levels. So while it doesn't lock step with how we're teaching things, what order we teach them in versus what order the book teaches them in, because we don't teach to a book, right? We teach to our standards. Sometimes that's one of the things that we're looking at. But what is nice about this is it does give us a norm so we can see how we compare to any student who takes this diagnostic throughout the United States or world. And it informs just our progress along the way. So this is our fall winter math diagnostic. Again, we're seeing the kind of growth that we're hoping to see. We see students in Tier 1 growing and students in Tier 3 thinning out. Right now it looks like we have a good group in Tier 2, and hopefully by spring we'll see some movement between that as well. That's what we're hoping for.
So a quick question off that.
Sure.
With those goals and stuff, our goal for the year was what percentage, Dr. Hocker?
5% in all
5%?
categories. Yep.
And are we on track to
I-
meet or surpass that at this point?
I don't know the answer to that. I wish that I did. I didn't look at that. That would have been a great thing to have on here. But I'll take a note and send it to you. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be good just at this point,
Mhm.
midway through everything, just to where we at.
Yes.
in
And I
that.
do have that longitudinal data
Yeah,
for you. So I'll
thanks.
put together a packet of things to send that you can see how we've done year over year. And yeah, that's a great question. And how we compared from last year to this year.
Great, thank you.
I guess my question for that overall 5% growth, we're going to use multiple tests, not just these. Are these the main tests that we're using?
No, that's correct. And you can
Multiple, I can't read that far, sorry.
no, that's our,
I probably have it in my bag. That is way too far. Even with my glasses, I can't see that far.
Okay. So I will get that to you
Okay.
so that you
thank
can see what it looked like. I think we have from 2020, 2019 to present. So I can get you that data and we can see what that looks like with a 5% increase. Yep.
That'd be great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks.
So in theory, we could take a peek at where we're at winter versus last year as well.
Mm-hmm.
We have a gut on that. Just
You could go winter to winter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Great. Any other questions?
No, thanks, Heather. Appreciate it. And with that extra data, that'll be really
Yeah.
helpful. And,
Okay.
given that some of our goals are really new, even for us this year. So it's good for us just to relearn, this is a good time of year to check in.
Yeah.
How are we progressing on that goal? So,
Makes sense.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. All right. Next on our agenda is our budget update.
All right, Shannon, you want to bring that slide up?
Yeah.
Hi,
Or
Shannon.
Seth, I
evening,
guess, in the
trustees.
back.
Hi, Shannon. Welcome.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Probably have to do some zoom ins and zoom outs as we talk.
And Shannon, is this the same thing that we have a copy of as well?
Yeah,
in front of
so
us right
in
now?
front of you, let's see, is just what we have projected is what you have in front of you, which is kind of a one-page little workbook that we are going to discuss. And it looks very similar to what you saw from our last workshop, just updated, simplified a little bit. So just as a recap, what we're doing is that we're discussing our projection for next year's budget, taking into account our current expenditures with known updates and estimates projecting into FY25 based off of current revenue with projected enrollment. So with the next year's projection, we are projecting a decline of enrollment by another 300 students. So what that means to us is about a little more than a $4 million loss in state funding. So you'll see that right here. Added with expected increases in expenditures, we reviewed that at the last workshop. A good amount of that was the $1 million in medical increases that we can expect, about a 7% average increase. So those two items adds up to our budget shortfall for next year, if we don't do anything about it, of course. And that's when we started discussing possible reductions for next year and kind of with the exercise of prioritizing those. Sorry, this is just not the, wish we could, okay, perfect. So let me try to zoom in a little bit. Okay, so our first recommendation to you was to right size staffing, meaning that we're seeing a decline in enrollment. We had about 460 this year, projecting 300 next year. So we're right sizing teaching staff for that. So, less students means less teachers. So we were recommending 19 positions, 10 in the elementary, 9 in the secondary level for next year. So that is $1.425 million, which reduces our $6 million shortfall. So we'll just have that checked for now. Our second, now this list is not in a list of prioritizations. This is for discussion, board discussion. So our second area of reduction is temporarily closing one elementary school, and Dr. Hawker can speak to that closure and why we are choosing the word temporary.
Yeah, thanks. Well, again, we also know that in the very near future, we've got some development growth in our community. So I think it's best not to assume that we want to close a school and sell it and get it off our books, right? So I think the best conversation is to say, while our enrollment is down, if indeed we are down another 300 students as we're currently projecting moving forward to next year, then it makes sense to possibly align our number of elementary schools with that, similar to what we had 20 years ago or so when we had about the same enrollment numbers, which was 10 instead of 11. But I do anticipate in the next 5-10 years, I don't know how long down the road, we'll start to see some potential growth, and we want to possibly have that building as an avenue. We also know there's some other opportunities to use that building in some other ways, to maybe reduce some leases, to do some other cost savings within the district. So I think it's just a good conversation. We also just I don't want to paint the picture today knowing what we know, that we are for sure, mothballing a school and demoing it and selling the land or whatever. I just want to make sure we're far away from that conversation today until we just know more. Any questions about that? I see Jimmy's wheels turning.
I mean, at this point in time, are you identifying a school, or do you
Just
have
a school, yep.
whittled it down to a list based upon?
Yeah, we're looking at just what the savings would be for a school. You can see we've identified just short of $1 million or so if you close an entire school, and that savings comes from some staff, some administration, those types of things would not get relocated to another school. But teaching staff primarily would. The students would get shifted to another school, and most of the teaching staff would also be shifted around the district to fill other vacancies or to go with those students. But no, we've not specifically identified school A as the one that's going to close at this juncture. Not at all, because again, this is all a work in process. We just want to continue these conversations to keep you abreast, because here soon, by Marchish or so, in your next workshop, we are going to need to start whittling down that list to be more fine-tuned.
With that possible temporary closure, what does that begin to do to some of the other classroom sizes at those other schools? How does that begin to affect the rest of the district?
Classroom size is expected to remain about the same. It's just a shifting. When you're down 400 students, even just this year, there are pockets of holes within the schools, right? What we're looking at right now is just that shuffle, because we also know if you redistrict the entire school district, reboundary the entire school district, that really is it's a stress on our families and our students. So we want to be very minimal in that specific move. But hypothetically, if you close one school and send them all to another school, that school's not going to have the room to do that. So it's very strategic in how you would possibly reboundary that school that you would close, where they would go, and it might make a shuffle in that existing school's boundary to maybe allow a neighboring school district to absorb some of our school boundary, to absorb some of those students as well. So there's a little trickle down, affecting that. We're just trying to make sure that trickle doesn't affect all 11 elementary schools, perhaps. So again, we're not at a point today to say it's school A or school B, but we do just want to recognize that regardless of that school, we are very confident of an estimated $1 million savings that will come from the board on that. And that's, there's a couple of those bigger ticket item pieces, and then there's a whole bunch of smaller ticket items, if you will, that we're trying to weigh the pros and cons and create that priority list. And we're going to go over that here today. And then the other side of the coin is the revenue generation ideas and things that we also want to work on. But again, those are not always 100% guaranteed. They're just but we'll spend some time and go over those so I can share with you our thoughts and how we're being very conservative in those numbers as well.
So you can see by selecting that option, that adds about $1 million to our selected amounts to reduce, so leaving a $3.4 million shortfall. So as we check the tools, you can see those amounts change. Okay, the third line item is a 4-day hybrid school year. And Sean, would you like to speak to that as well?
I definitely need to. So, in our last workshop, we talked about, wondering what it might save us in a 4-day week, and started those, conversations. Because we know that question's been out there because of our neighboring school district, Post Falls, that did switch to a 4-day week for a completely different reason. But through our work and through our efforts, we've identified that we think our very best move with really the the best opportunity for some cost savings is to try to create some middle ground. Maybe not a 4-day week, which does put stressors on lots of our parents, lots of our businesses, the whole community. Very well could maybe not be super in love with a 4-day week scenario when they're counting on kids going someplace. But also on the flip side, trying to find, what can we do to create still some cost savings in districts, in the buildings throughout the whole district, and still gain opportunities for our staff to remain on, in the professional development world. And we've taken a really good look at Bonneville School District 93's example. And they run what I would call a hybrid, what we're calling a hybrid. It is not a 4-day week, but it's kind of a 4-day week almost every other week. So they have a 5-day schedule. We would propose that we would have a 5-day schedule every other week. We would have a 4-day schedule, every other week, because there's just a lot of holidays and other Monday holidays and things that kind of blend into that. And when Shannon has cost estimated that out to be close to $500,000, $450,000, and that's a big enough ticket item that I think it warrants a conversation. We would, our Monday morning late starts would go away. We would not, have those. Giving a quick cursory look at a schedule and what that would mean for our day, I think it would be very minimal for most of our grade bands, either elementary or high school. You would be looking at maybe adding 10, 15, 20 minutes.
About 15 minutes.
15 minutes
15 to
or so
20
a
for
day.
elementary and high, nothing for middle school because they're already
over.
their
Thank you, Shannon.
instructional hours.
I just heard those numbers today and hadn't put them to memory yet, so I was giving you my best estimate. But yeah, so let's say 15 minutes more, perhaps elementary and high school, and that would gain an entire Monday of PD day at least once a month for our staff, which would be very beneficial as we're continuing our work with our strategic plan and our professional learning community focus. But it would create instead of a late start Monday, essentially it's a no school Monday, possibly a couple times a month, maybe once a month if there's holidays in that month. We've got Mr. Davis did did a draft calendar already just to kind of see what that might look like. And again, it's just following Bonneville School District's example. And I'll share with you why that's relatively interesting to us in Coeur d'Alene. We have shared with our community for the last 3 years since I've been here that we are already a high achieving school district, not necessarily number one in every category that we want to be, but certainly high. When you look at Bonneville, they're getting closer to us, and of all districts in the state, based on my research of the larger districts, I'll say, no districts made more growth than Bonneville. And so I'm obviously interested in what are they doing to close that gap so fast. And this is a unique schedule that they're on, something very similar. It's a little different than ours, and I've spoken with their superintendent a few times to get the pros and cons and things that he would maybe change if he could do it over again, because we have that opportunity to learn from that example and make it maybe even better. But they've closed that gap more than most any large district. And so, of course, I'm sure they're sitting down in their district and they're just mapping it out to see how many years will it be before they perhaps become in the top, couple in the state. Obviously, that's our goal, is to remain high. When you're at the top, you're the target, and that's where we're at. And so we don't want to do things too drastic that might possibly make us, step backwards. And that's obviously that's my challenge that I feel the weight on as we're facing a $6 million, anticipated budget deficit. How do we address those budget cuts, but yet remain a high achieving, district? So this hybrid schedule right now is probably the most appealing option to us, rather than a full 4 days. So I wanted to get that out today in this specific workshop, because I also don't want a lot of folks, whether they love the 4-day or they hate the 4-day, I don't want them thinking that that's even what we're leaning towards, today, because it's really not. I think this hybrid schedule would be it. I think many of our parents are already used to holiday here or there almost every month, and we can figure out ways to do things. We know what days those would be. We would have opportunities to do, to work with our community partners and other enrichment opportunities for kids and things. We can work on, providing daycare opportunities for young kids that need them. It's a relatively easy scenario to do when you're looking at doing it just once or twice a month rather than every week on a 4-day, schedule. So just wanted to share with you that 4-day hybrid discussion and say that, you certainly could look at the Bonneville School District. I can show you all of their information. They've been doing it for a while. And as I said, they've been having some really good success with closing their achievement gaps and gaining on the rest of the state. Not sure, how far that'll go, and maybe they, with that schedule, they pass us. It's why I want to make sure we're taking a look at that option, especially since we know we have to do something because we're facing this $6 million budget deficit. So questions?
I have a question.
Fire away.
So is this close to $500,000? Is that estimate kind of a very conservative estimate? Because it was, when you first brought this idea, it was a savings between, say, 0.5% and 2%. And now with this modification, probably won't save us quite as much. But is this a more conservative estimate? Could it possibly go higher?
I think it possibly could go higher. Shannon, I'll let you address that. But yeah, just as a reminder, with a hybrid scenario, you're not looking at the full $1 million that we maybe thought, the 1% that we were really estimating. And I think that 1% was probably pretty accurate, because here we're looking at a hybrid where we're still saving almost half that. So Shannon, do you want to share your conservative? Shannon's very conservative.
Yeah, I am very conservative in my calculations. It's just probably a good thing for a director of finance, but I do know I annoy some people with that. So I went kind of extensively through cost savings, really mainly just looking at of the staffing levels we know would be reduced. So there's definitely more, but just wanted to remain super conservative for now. And yeah, just like Sean said, we presented a 1% based off of a full 4-day, but now we're presenting the hybrid with that. And actually we see more savings with a hybrid because we really don't have to add minutes to as many minutes to staff to make up for like the big increase in the bell schedule. So we actually are surprisingly see a good amount of cost savings from this versus the full 4-day where you would have to add at least half an hour onto people's schedules for that contact time with students. Okay, so yeah.
So on the, thanks. It's great to hear that you went through and whittled down the cost savings there. So for instance, if I'm a bus driver, what happens to my wages if I go do a hybrid model? Yeah. So
with this hybrid model, we're looking at around 13 days, 13 less school days. So that would mean 13 less work days for those bus drivers.
And that's where the savings comes in this. It's our bus drivers, our cooks, some of our other hourly, employees. We would not have school open those days. Also, we anticipate some fringe savings of being able to have the lights off on those, days and not be turning lights on those full days.
Does this also include potential sub savings?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so we factored in a little bit of sub savings. We even factored in, with a decrease in transportation expenditures and child nutrition expenditures also means a decrease in revenues. So we factored in the net savings after taking a look at revenue too. So a lot of options and extensive research in that. But again, these projections are still very new and working groups still have to be done for them.
I'm confident you thought of all the things we just did.
Yeah. Okay, so I just checked that for now. And so we see the remaining reductions needed continues to go down. So line 4 is additional staff reductions on top of these right sizing. So we've identified 17 positions across the district and in buildings, and then a mixture of certified and classified. As a leadership team, both with the district office and building, we've identified all those possible positions, and there's different combos of, reducing some. So really the work is, until we know what JFAC has in store for us of new revenue, we don't want to release those positions, and we have to prioritize a lot more and really discuss with building leadership and then continue discussions with secondary and elementary, but we have identified 17 possible positions. And Sean, if you would like to speak to that as well.
She said that very well. That plain and simple, after you get past the first 19, as we start going, with additional cuts, they're big decisions. But we have identified that additional 17 positions. It's a compilation of all kinds of different roles and responsibilities within the district that, depending upon what may come from legislature, which we'll know in another month or so, we may have to initiate those reductions as well. Now, in a typical year, Eric, Mr. Davis could confirm this, but we generally have around 8 to 10% staff turnover in the district. So with 600-ish teachers, it's not out of the question that we have 60 teachers or so every year that just move on, retire, whatever the case is. So even though you're seeing 20 teaching positions and 17 other positions, we might be thinking, wow, we really got to cut a ton of people. There may be a lot of that being able to be absorbed through just natural attrition. Eric?
Typically, we'll lose between 20 and 30 certified teaching positions every year through retirement and resignation. Typically. I haven't seen anything less. I think the lowest that it's been since I've been here has been about 24. So we have space, and already we've picked up. I think we're at 9 that have already given us notification before the rest of the year is up that they won't be returning, and 8 of those are retiring, and 1's a resignation. So,
Thanks, Eric. So there's some options.
Quick question on that. So is with our cost of living here, does that make like early retirement? Does that take that sort of incentive off of the table for these staff positions and cost savings, or?
can you clarify that question just a little bit for me?
Yeah, so I'm replacing your more senior staff with younger staff. Is that have we been able to attract or had a difficulty attracting newer teachers into the profession, younger age teachers into the profession?
That's a nationwide issue, that there are less teachers being produced than ever before. So from that point of view, it's harder. It wasn't as hard this year because of some of the things we did with salary last year that have helped, and we've been able to be fully staffed in the standard teaching areas. Special ed is still an issue. But there is a little bit of a savings when somebody retires and we hire somebody new. But generally, we're not looking necessarily to hire first-year teachers. We get a lot of teachers that bring in some experience as well. But it is generally from a retired teacher to a new teacher. There is some cost savings that we do get. Did that answer your question? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I just, I think waiting for JFAC is a good idea, especially, we took a look at Superintendent Critchfield's budget proposals, then the governor's proposals, and then we'll have to wait for JFAC to see kind of what proposals they'll go with. But Superintendent Critchfield, they did some incredible data analysis to see the kind of the loss in state funding that a lot of districts are experiencing. And with her proposal, she really would have covered our $4 million, which is amazing, right? But and then the superintendent's proposal or the governor's proposal, we kind of analyzed that and did some rough calculations, and he would kind of propose at least half of that, so maybe $2 million. But so these are all unknowns, and until we have a clear understanding of what our true revenue budget will be like, we just hold off. And there's these decisions are changing every day. Okay, so line 17. So I'll have to explain that one. So we currently cover, I think, 68% of our family plan for. So about a little more than $14,000 per person for medical, and really we can we're very likely at least going to experience a 7% increase for medical. So this option would be maintaining our current contribution, so keeping that $14,000 and not increasing that contribution for those that medical increase. So our single and then a employee plus one child would still be covered under that $14,000 threshold, but anyone with an employee plus two children or a family plan, they would have to absorb that full increase. So that we're projecting about $500,000 that would cost the district to increase and maintain that 68% medical coverage. Or if we don't want to look into that, that would be about 7 more positions. So if you have any questions on that.
This would be a matter for negotiations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Well, yeah, it would definitely be in negotiations. Now our negotiated amount is currently at that $14,000. So yeah.
Oh. Shannon, I actually have one more question.
Yeah.
How much of an increase would that be in our larger families?
I don't have that individual calculation, but I can give that to you. Yeah. Okay, so our next option would be, is reducing our custodial vacancies. So currently we have our custodial vacancies still running on our books. We have backfilled them with custodial agency contracts. So really this would be eliminating those vacancies that we've had on the books for a while and just keeping those contracts. It's a vacancy savings, so it's not like we're having to reduce any custodian staff. It's just eliminating those vacancies and just hoping for just monitoring those agency contracts. Hopefully they're not going to have huge increases, but continue to monitor and see how much we would have to reduce each year. But right now, the contracts cost us less than having a full-time custodial position. So that was kind of under our priority ones. Really doesn't have, it's not hurting our current staff. So. Okay, next one would be a 5% building budget reduction. So it's kind of a drop in the bucket, but anything helps. Of $58,000, and then line 20 is really a combination of a lot of different decisions that we could do with department budget reductions, including decreasing curriculum budget by about $225,000, looking at some instructional licenses that we could reduce in we would just have to figure out a solution for what we can't do without those, and some of it has to do with assessment, so realizing those can't be benchmarks anymore, and then operational contracts too. So that saves us almost $1 million, or $500,000, sorry. And then our last one, it's around $73,000, and it's an either or type of deal. If we have our current calendar without the hybrid, we could identify this cost savings. If we do go to a 4-day hybrid, that really eliminates this option. So with these, all of them checked besides this last row, we are at we're finding reductions of $5.5 million, with a remaining reductions needed of about $500,000. But we do want to we're looking at the expenditure side. We now are going to switch to more positive side of things, of increasing revenues, and just remembering that this million shortfall is without any new revenue from the state. So very early projections and numbers that we're working with. So Sean, I'll probably you can take it from here to talk about the good stuff.
All right, thanks, Shannon. Yeah, let me talk the good stuff.
Okay.
That's great. I'll just go through these items real quick, and then just pause me if you have any specific questions. I think one great avenue, we've got a great partnership going with North Idaho College and our dual enrollment plans. We are able to essentially rent space to them through our facilities with the ability to have our teachers help teach some of those dual enrollment courses. And that's generating some dollars. We've been doing it this year already, and so we've got an estimation there that we can generate a couple $100,000 for next year. So that's something we want to do pretty much for sure. I think that's very easy. There's a couple items on here that are just a little more. They'll take some specific effort, but I really feel like we can do this. The next item is the increase the attendance by 1%. By doing that, you'll generate over $300,000 if we just went from 70 or 93% attendance to 94% attendance. And you might say, well, how are you going to convince parents to get their kids here that extra 1% of the time? And it's been my experience. I have flashbacks back 20, 25 years ago when I was a principal. You can incentivize kids coming to school in lots of cool ways that kids really love it, and they're just more apt to come. Not that that every family wants to be gone 8% of the school year on a vacation or something, but trying to incentivize kids. We could work with our local communities, get some bikes donated, get cars donated, all those kinds of things, and have kids put their name in a hat every week or month that they have perfect attendance, and they get a drawing to win those kinds of things. I've seen it work where you can really grow attendance. I think also we've heard specifically that in Post Falls, with them being on a true 4-day week, their elementary attendance has gone up significantly. I would assume a hybrid schedule of every other week being a 4-day week might also still get a little uptick in attendance, because there would be just at least one more day for parents to take a 3-day weekend or to go visit grandma, on that 3-day weekend once or twice a month, and maybe not miss a regular school day. So I think there's a ample way for us to grow that attendance by 1%. I think that's a reasonable goal, which generates $300,000. I think we've discussed the ongoing conversation of our outdoor field, rental facility increases. We need to address that. I put a very conservative $20,000 estimate there. Again, I know it's small compared to lots of these other numbers that you're looking at, but as Shannon has shared, every little thing does count. But Jeff has evaluated our overall, facility rentals. We do rent our outdoor fields super cheap. It's like $3 for a 3-hour minimum, rental, $1 an hour. I do think there's some avenues for us to address that. Now, again, that's a small piece of our overall facility rental component, so it's not like we can, make $50,000 just by increasing our grass rates by a lot. You'd have to really do way more than that to get to that level. But we do think $20,000 is probably a reasonable number, and we'll continue to fine tune that. We also have recognized across the district that none of our grade bands of schools, elementary, middle school, or high school, are super close to the same instructional minutes every day, same hours. We've got schools that might go to school an extra, even 3 to 5 minutes a day. Doesn't sound like much, but over the course of the whole year, it ends up being 20 hours. And so we do think there's some savings in standardizing those timelines a little bit better and just get things within a little tighter window, and that could generate a little bit of money. And then probably the best one and probably the most fun, but also the most, I think, also very realistic. I've estimated an increase in enrollment by 30 over and above what we thought we were going to lose, perhaps, of just new kids to the district, whether that's homeschool, out of district, whatever, new kids coming to us next year by 30. And I think that's far understated, but again, Shannon's rubbing off on me. I'm trying to be very conservative in our estimates so we can hit those. We have we have waiting lists at some of our schools, like Sorensen, for instance, and we just don't have space for those kids to get in. We have an online school that we just really started running this year in our Venture Academy, where we have 150 online students being taught by three teachers. So they're each teaching 50 kids, and that's even a higher ratio than what you'd normally want in that scenario. But we continually hear from other students who might like that avenue, and right now we've kind of put the brakes on those because our teachers are already, at 50. But we know we could grow, some of that avenue. We also, we're exploring other avenues where we can just grow opportunities within our own district so that we can retain students that might leave us and go somewhere else, or want to come here now that the legislature has opened up the doors for really any student to go anywhere they want as long as there's space. Right now we have some space, so I think we can be mindful of that. So we have just placed a very conservative 30 students down, but you can see that that's all tied to our support units, and one support unit generates about $140,000 for us. So if we could get 30 new kids, we would get another $140,000, and you can see with just those very conservative numbers there, that creates an additional revenue of $700,000. And through all the items that Shannon had kind of checked on and off, I think we're sitting up there. Well, you can see now we've matched our, we've kind of matched our needs. So we can see what legislation does next month as they start to talk about the educational components of the budget. And then we can make some decisions. We'll have a workshop in March, which might be just a little before the legislature has decided or not. We don't know. We know some of these bills, the budget's supposed to be heard sometime around the 5th to the 15th. So it may or may not hit us in the right timeline, but this is all part of your master planning calendar with all of these items. If we're going to close a school, if we're going to go to a hybrid schedule, if we're going to do any of these kinds of bigger things, we've got to start making those decisions so that we can get those balls rolling and get that communication started. It's a lot to put into place before school starts up again in September. So questions about the overall budget update since our last workshop 2 weeks ago?
How soon before you'd have, or at least bring, I guess, back to us, the facility use increases in the fields? I mean, is that what
that's
going to
happen, Jeff? I guess we just plan to put that in place before July 1 for the next school year's budget at some juncture. So sometime between now and then, I anticipate we will bring a proposal of new rates and what we would like to present. Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, just real quickly, I think it'd be beneficial to put a committee together to study this and make some recommendations and bring that to the board for formal approval.
With the intent then of at least next year having something in place.
Yeah, for the next fiscal year.
Sweet. Okay, thanks. And one more question just for myself, and then we can keep going down. Thoughts on how to take the temperature, I guess, of the community regarding a hybrid? Because that to me...
Thank you. Well, first, I wanted to get your temperature on these kinds of conversations. I think what we would like to do, if you would like, and if you give us that blessing, we would like to start asking those kinds of questions. We would have about 4 weeks before our next, March workshop. And I think that's an ample opportunity for us to float some things out there to our community and ask some very strategic questions. If we went with a calendar like this, what would you like to know? What would you like to have available maybe on those off days? What would be your support? Those kinds of things. We've already begun thinking of some of those kinds of questions. Didn't want to get the cart before the horse and put that out there already and come to you today and say, we've asked these questions when you guys didn't even know about a hybrid, potential. But again, Bonneville's done this very successfully, so I think that helps us learn from what they've done and what we could do even better from specifically from a cost-saving function, as well as a student performance function. Our efforts through this entire budget reduction exercise has remained on our strategic plan that we put into place last year and the focus on student achievement, and all of these decisions are are based on that. I think most of our community, the individuals that I've spoken to at various different community events, they understand that we're down in enrollment today. We're anticipating being down over 700 students next year compared to what we were just last year. And we're down in enrollment closer to the 2000, 2005 enrollment numbers in this district, and so they see that it makes sense to make sure our staffing matches that need. And we have through COVID dollars, through ESSER funding, through COVID, and trying to understand what was happening with our enrollments. You think about Coeur d'Alene, and for 20 years, clear until COVID in 2020, you were growing at a good solid 2+% on average almost every year, and so that's naturally a trend that you believe is coming. You look at subdivisions like the Cortez subdivision in our school district that has over 2,000 homes coming in, and you think, holy cow, that could be another 1,000 to 2,000 students if there's 1 or 2 kids per house, right? But since COVID and since high inflation here in our community and high housing costs and the list goes on and on, we've dropped 700 plus students just in the couple years since I've been here, and that's a concerning trend that we need to grasp. And so I think that reduction down again of about 20 teachers makes sense. 19 teachers. We have been very strategic in what that looks like. I think people get that makes sense. It's now the next stuff. I mean, I think the worst thing we could do to our community is close a school and then need to reopen it again the next year. That would be silly. So we really need to look at long and hard and figure out what's the trend looks like, what makes the best sense. Fortunately, although several of our schools are significantly older and we are $30 million in deferred maintenance and needs in this district, they're all operable. They're all safe for students to be in today. And so there's not one school that makes sense that it's this is the oldest that needs the most repairs. We might as well hold it back for a year or two and close it. It's not like that. All of our schools are in good enough shape that we have all kids in them today, and we wouldn't do that if they were unsafe in the first place, right? So it makes that work even more challenging. How do we not disrupt every elementary school in the entire district with possibly closing a school? But those are the line items that get us better aligned to a budget that we are now facing.
Thanks. Additional questions?
Well, more. When do we as a board get the specifics of what this hybrid will be?
Well, if you're interested in us evaluating that, let me start asking some community some questions, and then my plan would be to bring you that more specifics. I've got a calendar sampling right now that Mr. Davis already put together, just a draft so that we could start putting hours to it. We needed to know if we're going to ask our teachers to work an extra 2 hours, every day, to have that every other Monday as a planning day. That's not going to work. And the planning day, our point of a planning day is at least one of those every month is it's a teacher planning. It's a teacher preparation day. It's a teacher work day for us to do the PLC collaboration components, right? So you've got to work that in to the schedule as well. And Mr. Davis shared that with me today, and I think we've got a good start. So we would plan to bring you as much of this information, if it's of interest to you and something that we should continue to explore. We'll bring you that at your very next workshop, which I think is scheduled in about a month in March.
I certainly am interested in exploring the hybrid schedule. I personally know some people who've been in the Bonneville School District and felt like it was working well.
Oh, great. Okay, that's good to know. We have to talk to them personally.
And then the other comment I guess I have is, so we had long range planning meeting last Monday. And that's a committee made up of about 30 community members. And what we did for this meeting was we spent, 40 minutes, just them at tables working together, working through some general thoughts and questions on facilities and also on budget. And it was actually really, it was a good discussion. I think many of our long range planning committee are interested in kind of a 4 or 5 day hybrid. That actually was suggested by someone at a table there as well. And then the other thing that they were all pretty interested in was us trying to get more students, kind of essentially marketing how good our schools are and our programs are, and drawing kids in. So that was something they were very interested in as a general group at that meeting. So just wanted to share that with you. And those meeting minutes are available are they available on the website yet? Okay. Okay, yeah. So you could see all the points that each group went through on those minutes. Anyway, I think it was a good meeting.
Any more questions at this point?
I mean, everything that you've said about a hybrid or a 4-day involves schools that have seen their student achievement rise. So if you can cut costs, help with retaining and attracting, great talent and student achievement, it just would be crazy not to pursue it. So with what you're saying, Heather, I think when it comes to, managing this budget, and I know that you've put so much time into it, and thank you, and this was great to have it put together this way. I think there are folks in our community that probably do this for a living as well, and maybe in their own private businesses have had to cut things. And so the more input that we can get from the community, I think the better when it comes to this, because most of them, they're in the weeds and they want to see us win. So I think I don't know if it's forming another committee or just, making sure that invitation is out, but there's a lot of smart people that could probably help us.
Thanks, Jimmy. And we appreciate that. And yes, that would be the point also of this survey. And we as Heather mentioned, long range planning is a group of about 30. We also have a superintendent parent advisory committee that has I think there's about 30 members of that. At least half attend every meeting. We also have a superintendent's community advisory committee, and that's about 60 people large, and with about half that show up at least at every meeting. And so we've continued to get lots of different community members, inputs. I think that's really good. And I think if sounds to me like you're okay, we can begin to maybe start asking some more broader questions to our parents, specifically within our community, as to something related to this hybrid schedule, and what their initial thoughts and reactions are, so that we can begin to address those questions as we continue to work forward on this budget. Okay, we will proceed accordingly then. Thank you.
And so I think that conversation leads us into Stephanie and even marketing and our communications and how we tell the story of the really great things that are going on in 271. So
just this one. Thank you, Shannon. Thanks, Chair Smith and Dr. Hawker, trustees. This is probably a perfect segue from the last conversation into this next one here. Before we start, I just wanted to say, it's the first time we've had a conversation together, so I'm excited about that, and it's one of my favorite topics. Communications is an art and a science. If you're a linear thinker and you're creative, you get to do all that stuff together, and I've loved doing it for a long time, and it's one of those things that continues to evolve. Just when you think you have it figured out, things change, technology changes, people change, and you have to sort of take another look at it. So it's super interesting and fun, and I love doing it. So I'm here today just sort of to go over at a high level what we're doing with communications and engagement, and hoping that the conversation will be two-way. Interrupt me at any time if you have a question. And I think as we move forward through our strategic plan, if you look up on the wall here, goal 3 is a communications and engagement goal. It is to try to improve our external communications and build trust in the community. And to do that, We were tasked with developing a communications and engagement strategic plan, which the district has never had. So we're starting fresh, and I'm excited about it. So the conversations about communications take a long time, just because there's so much there. And we don't have a long time. So this is chapter 1. I was talking to Dr. Hawker about it today. It's chapter 1 of several chapters as we move through talking about communications, and what your interests are and what you're hearing and seeing in the community is as important as anyone else's input. And you see lots of folks, you have that experience. So I want you to, anytime you see something we do, or missed an opportunity, or did great, any of those kinds of things, I always want to see that so we can factor that into our calculus. So at the end of our, I'm not going to take 45 minutes. Don't let me take 45 minutes. We'll take a half an hour. At the end of that time, I'm hoping that you'll leave here knowing more about what the communications programming is. Get a feel for what we're doing well, or what you think we're doing well, what I think we're doing well, and where the opportunities lie. And I kind of like to look at it like that versus what we're sort of not doing. Okay, so let's start with what the communications department is responsible for. And we don't need to go through all of these things, but I want you to look at all of these things just so you know kind of, if you don't have a professional communicator in your organization, sometimes you don't always know what they do all day long. So Communications 101 on the left, in the left column, that's just basic. Any communicator working for any organization is going to do those things. There's internal communication, there's external communication. They're connected, but they're different. So they have different needs, there's different priorities. Obviously, what we've been talking about with the budget is important in both places. But from an internal standpoint, your internal folks are your family. Those are your people. You don't want to surprise them. Devin does great reporting on these topics, but I would rather our folks not learn about something from her great reporting. I would rather that we talk about it first. So internal is hugely important. We're not going to dig into that today because we're going to focus on the external stuff, but we do have an internal plan, and my great colleagues here are super helpful in how we bring our own people along. So strategy, you're going to see this. Strategy and research is a component of almost every single thing we do. Because if we don't understand our audience, and we haven't looked carefully at how they consume information and what they're interested in and what they're not interested in, we will fail. And you've probably seen this, you've probably been a part of it, we watch it on TV all the time. So it's an element of every one of these things. So I won't go through all the stuff on the left. Digital media is a thing all by itself. It's a specific skill set driven by content strategies, and you're familiar with the rest. Website, social, graphic design. John Mon handles that for us for the most part. Engagement, that's how you engage internally and externally. How are we, engagement to me means we're connecting in a personal way. It's not just me sending you an email and you sending me one back. It's a way that we can sit down and share interests, and either hopefully we're going to move each other one way or the other. You learn something, you might change your behavior. That only really happens when we're networking and when we're in a room together, like to Heather's point at the long range committee meeting. People were doing that, and it's fun to see. It's super important part of the mix. Public affairs, this is the hard stuff, and it comes up all the time, and when it pops up, you drop everything else to do that thing because you don't want your reputation to suffer. It includes issue management, legislative things, community issues. And then there's these things that we also do. Media relations is important, and we're blessed here to have reporters and a newspaper that ask good questions, hold us accountable, want to be part of the conversation, and that's helpful for us. So that takes a lot of time. It's important to understand what the community is interested in, but media relations is critical because it is essentially free. If it's a way for us to get our messaging out into the community, or to have a dialogue with the community in a way that doesn't actually cost us any money to do that. Crisis communications, you know what that is. It happens in small, medium, and large ways, and we have to be prepared for all of those things. The small ones allow us to practice for the medium and the large. I think this group is, with Seth's leadership, with our emergency response, we're in pretty good shape there. God forbid anything awful happen, but we are, I think, pretty well prepared there. And then the research side. As a communicator, you have to understand the industry. You got to be looking at national, regional, state trends, demographics, all those things. Opinion research, we were just talking about that. How are we going to find out what our community thinks about changing the way public school looks in Kootenai County? So these are some of the things, and the team that does this for the district is me and John Mon, and this group, who is hugely supportive. But you can see what the volume looks like. And it's exciting and fun, and I wouldn't do anything else. But that's what we do in the communications department. So let's just look at, we did develop a communications plan, internal, external. The elements were, I went through and did a situation analysis. First thing you do, what's right, what's wrong, what's working, what's not. And then based on that, move through these really basic things that you've probably all done and gone through. And so we're gonna run through these at a pretty high level. And then stop me, like I said, anytime if you have a question. So the first thing we do is figure out what the goal is. And this is not the organization's goal necessarily, but it is connected to the strategic plan. But this is our communication goal. What we want is to embody a culture of trust and transparency with a demonstrated, unified commitment to the success and achievement of our students that grows from inside the organization out. And the thinking there is, if we are a culture internally full of trust and transparency as a unit, as a group, we're going to communicate those behaviors, and we're going to exercise those behaviors externally, and our focus is always going to be fundamentally on the success of our students. So we have a couple of objectives, and I broke them out because this is one long sentence. So feel free, Heather and Patty and Mike, well, Dr. Nelson, to criticize the sentence. But it is, it's a big sentence. Implement a strategic and disciplined approach to communication engagement that results in positive relationships between the district and its stakeholders by focusing on a commitment to student achievement and fostering community trust through transparency. That's what we want to do. I know, yes, we're doing that, even though it's a long sentence. Here's number 2, broken out again for you. Implement strategies to inform and engage stakeholders about our strategic priorities, our performance in key areas, innovations and initiatives, accomplishments and challenges, partnership strengths, so they understand our commitment to providing the highest level, or highest quality education for every child through a focus on student-centered learning. So there's a lot of words there, and that is, we're in the words business, but from both of these objectives, we can pull pretty clear messaging about who we are, what we're doing here. So you write it here and then you pull from it. So we aren't constantly having to rewrite what we're about and trying to find the words that help our community understand what we're trying to do. That's the beauty of having, objectives and goals that make sense, have all the right stuff in there. And I'm not sure they do. We can absolutely talk about it, and these are living documents. So if you have some feedback, I'd love to hear it. But those are the 2 objectives. So that's how we're going to get to the goal, by doing those 2 things. The next thing we do is figure out who our audiences are. Have you seen this before? You guys have probably seen this before. It's how to figure out who your audiences really are and how much time and energy to spend when you have a ginormous audience like we do. Top left is the high influence, low interest folks. Those are the people in the community that have a lot of visibility, are very active, but they aren't paying attention to public school issues. Bottom left, low influence, low interest. Those are the apathetics. Those people are not paying attention in any way at all. So the calculus here is try to figure out where you're going to spend your time and energy, right? Top right, high influence, high interest. Those people are hugely important. And low influence, high interest. Those, I don't necessarily like these labels. Those are the defenders. They don't have a lot of influence in the community or with their partners or friends, but they care a lot. There's a place for all of these folks in every one of these boxes. We just have to figure out who they are. So then when we're mapping, stakeholder maps are pretty common. This one just kind of gives us an idea of how we need to be engaging these folks. So the higher, that's the x-axis, right, Shannon? The one that goes up? Oh, that's the y-axis. I'm so not down with which one is which. Okay, so the higher your interest level and the higher your influence, the more we're going to try to engage. So that top right box, manage most thoroughly. Those people, those are the influencers, and we have lots of them in our community. Our job is to figure out where these folks are together as a group. Do our committees have these folks on them? Do we have the right people sitting around the table with us as we're trying to problem solve? So this is just an interesting way of looking at how to identify stakeholders. But for the most part, for public schools, it's pretty standard. These are our primary audiences. How come there's 3 ones there? I guess those 3 are the most important. And then number 2 is everyone else. No, it's not like that. District employees are yeah. Yeah, I just made a big mistake. District employees are really important. They're at the top of the list, if you happen to look at it that way, and I think we do here at this school district. Current parents and guardians and families, they are hugely important. Prospective parents, that group right there is becoming more and more important. And I don't know if it would have been on there 5 years ago or 3 years ago. Would it have been? Prospective parents and guardians would have still been on the list of people that were important stakeholders to understand.
Just didn't have much competition.
Yeah, 100%. And then the extended district community, and that's not an exhaustive list, but these are the folks we were just talking about, people with high interest, high influence, wherever they land. So they all require a different type of communication. They have different interest levels, they speak different languages, so we have to figure out how we're going to communicate with all these folks effectively. So that's the telling our story piece, which is really what communications is. These are the core themes, and I'm not going to read through all of them, but you can see in the bolded language here what our priorities are. So from these core themes, we pull opportunities through the different channels that we have. We message map these things. We find stories in our schools that reflect these things. We look for partnerships in the community that reflect these things. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time we turn around. We know what our core themes are, and because we are a small team, we have to prioritize. These are the things we think are the highest priority. So we're going to go looking for ways to communicate about these 4 things in general, rather than being all over the place. We don't have the resources to do that. So how are we going to connect with people? And this is the channel conversation. You get your audiences identified, you get your messages written, then how are you going to get your messaging from your laptop to the people that need to see it? So these 5 things are the most, I would say, the most efficient and the least expensive for school districts, for organizations like ours. And we have all these things. There are lots of others, but we're doing all of these things now, and we're going to be doing them better. But this is essentially a a multi-channel approach. We don't want to put all our eggs in one basket. You want to be everywhere because you don't know who you might miss. So these things are always going to be in the communication mix.
Stephanie,
Yes.
what's your definition of earned media?
Earned media, that is, we have a group of kids doing, in a math classroom, doing something really innovative with the teacher. They are learning in a new way. They are managing their own experience and their own academic achievement. That lines up with all the things that we want the community to understand. So then I call Devin and I ask her, would you like to come see what's going on in this classroom? And if she's interested, if we're dialed in and she knows what we're interested in and I know what her readers are interested in, she'll join and she'll come and do a story, which she's done many times. That is earned. We didn't pay for it. We worked for it, and it shows up in the newspaper, and that is an important part of the mix. It isn't always going to go exactly like that, but when the community interest, and Devin knows what that is, and the district's interests align, we can find some success there. So earned just means, Leslie, that we didn't pay for it. It's media coverage that you get because you figure out how to make that happen. So these are the priorities for us right now. The website redesign. We're so excited about that. Our website is the front door. It's the front porch or the front door, or whatever you want to call it, to the organization. It really is. And everything flows from that. So we're working on redesigning our website, and we'll have more to report to you there. I think you're going to be really happy about that. Content strategies and calendars, we're getting in the weeds here, but without those things, we're all over the place. It is whack-a-mole. I mean, we're just not focused on what we should be focused on. So that's what those are, and I'm working on those now. Updated, consistent messaging on web and social. What's on the website, what's in our parent communications ought to be on our social channels. It all needs to fit together based on thematic communications. News release calendar, we have to get better at this. Making sure that we're telling our own stories. News media outlets are spread so thin that they can't cover everything. So we've got to look for things that the community is going to find interesting, that we care about, and push those things out ourselves. Communication toolkits, this is just one example. These are fun to do and they're important, and if you do them right, they last a long time. They include fact sheets, talking points, photo, video on any number of things, and they can live on our website. So you want to know about a thing. The budget, our FY25 budget issue is a perfect example. We're creating a toolkit to go with that. So you go to one place on the website, you can see all of Shannon's awesome presentations, you can see Dr. Hawker's interviews, you can see the memos we've written. It all lives in one spot. It shouldn't be hard for people to find information.
Are these priorities, do these go hand in hand with the things that are on our Gantt chart, or is that separate? Or how do those two mesh together?
They are connected. These are what I think the priorities are. The Gantt chart includes other things, and I want you to talk to me about those things. These are underway now and don't take a lot of time to do. Are you thinking about like the brand refresh and stuff like that?
I'm just thinking because I've been struck as we've gone through our Gantt chart, just how many times the communication department, your name is right by six. I mean, a big, huge percentage of that. And so I just want to understand in my head how all of it meshes together so that we can be successful to reach our
So they
goals
are
here.
not inconsistent with one another. So I'd have to go back and look at the Gantt chart. I know there's one thing on there. I know the brand refresh. We're going to get to that in a second. But yeah, so I'll go back and look and make sure. Dr. Nelson will make sure too that they are connected because we want them to be. But these are, you know, if the Gantt chart has other things for us to do, we're still going to do these things because we have to.
Stephanie, is that new website for all the schools and the district?
Yes.
And then are there opportunities, or do the kids already participate in this with you in some fashion as part of what they do in school?
No, but they need to, especially with, this makes people nervous, but we turned our social media over to students 1 day a week at my previous place of employment, and there were certain requirements there. But when you do engage your kids, I think that's one really cool way to do it, or create content. They're out there shooting video and doing fun things anyway, so there's a place for our students. Jimmy, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, and then it tends to engage their parents too when they know.
Yep. Okay, so that leads us kind of to communications and marketing. So we've been talking about marketing, and in lots of meetings that I'm in, people will, we all hear it. We need to market the district better. We need to market to our prospective parents. And that is not incorrect. That's absolutely correct. But are communications and marketing the same thing? They're not. They're very different, but they're connected. And there's overlap. Communications, in the simplest way I can describe it, is storytelling. It raises awareness. It builds support. You know, we used to call it climate building. It's the foundation that you lay with your community about who you are, your interest in them, ways to increase understanding about what you do and why you do it. It is not a conversion strategy, though, and conversion is what marketing is about. I want to sell you a product successfully. I want you to buy it. So in order for me to convince you to buy a product, I need to use a different toolkit to do that. So there's more to come on this topic because we need to talk about it. There's competition here. There's scarce resources, so we're going to have to figure out, in terms of students, I mean, we're going to talk about this some more. So I can come back to you and we can talk about marketing in particular when you're ready to do that. Do you have any questions about this right now, about marketing? Okay. So let's finish with community engagement. So we're doing cool things now in the community that we need to develop further. And this is a way, when I first got here, we were talking about all the great partnerships that the district has. So we were trying to find a way, rather than to have our hand out in our community, but a way to celebrate and thank our community partners for their support. There's so many supportive folks. So we created the Friend of 271 initiative, which is, you're all looking at me like, what is that? It's under the radar right now. We've been doing it in the community, but we haven't kind of shined a light on it yet. Sean, is it Sean? It's not. Dr. Nelson says it's not. It's a way for us to celebrate individual partners. So we've done that. We have a plaque, we created a little logo, we celebrate people, and we've been doing this privately with businesses, but that is a way. The list is so long of everybody that we could honor in this community that has been there for our district and our kids and our families. We're going to grow that one a little bit bigger, and am interested in your perspective on who we might want to add to the list. It's a long list. But that's how, we can't always just be, look at us, listen to our story, like us, support us. We have to be showing up for other people and being as interested in their interests as we want them to be in ours. So we're just trying to improve some of that. The Help Another is an idea. We aren't doing it yet, but could we pick one opportunity a quarter to help another organization with something important to them? The core group comes to mind of just a way to give back. There's lots of need in this community. It could be a way for us to show up. And that could be all of you or some of you, plus district staff, plus our teachers and students. We could grow it so that we're giving back in a visible way. Community Partner Network, so I was going to ask you, Jimmy, when you say, are we communicating with the community? We were talking about the survey. Do you mean the community inside? Do you mean the parents? Or are you talking about our larger community when you use that word?
Yes, and yes.
Both?
Yeah,
Both
yeah.
and, okay. So we do have connections with a couple of hundred community members, but we need to grow that. How do we get better connected, short of buying a list, which we're not going to do, but how do we do that? And there's some strategies there. I would love your ideas. You guys know lots of people. So how do we build our own database so that every time we're sending a message out to our parents or to our staff about a budget shortfall, we also have a community list. That group is getting the same things. So we're communicating much more broadly. That one's going to be fun to do because I think there's a fairly easy way to do it, but we have to do it. We've been talking about community gatherings, and I think, you know, we were just talking about this. How are we going to bring the community together to get their feedback on the budget issues? And we could certainly do something there. The state of the district is something the district has done in the past that I think was successful. I was looking for your input on that. But that is an easy way to stand up once a quarter, twice a year in a larger format, maybe partnered with other education interested folks or business partners that want to talk about how public education is doing, how's the district doing in this area, and do it together. Have an opportunity for some dialogue with our community. Town hall gatherings, I think you guys have done these too. We haven't in a while. When was the last board town hall meeting? Have you had one? It's been a while? Last year. Okay.
Well, because we did we've done
For the levy.
2 events at least where we've been in the community together as a team. And so I can't remember off the top of my head. There was another one coming up this spring.
Yeah.
Or there's another event on the calendar.
So there's lots of ways to do those.
Right.
And if you're interested in talking more about how to do those in a new way, I think the sky's the limit. If we get together and talk about what you want the outcome to be, then how do we create the space for you to have that experience with folks? So there's lots to talk about there. Virtual gatherings, these are hit or miss. I think it depends on the audience and what the topic is. But if we can jump on a Zoom call with a group of people that just want to hear something quickly, an update, I think we could use that technology a little bit more than we're using it now for quick updates rather than people having to wait. And then the last thing I have here to share with you is just some ideas around our community committees and our advisory groups. As Dr. Hawker mentioned, there's the parent partners group, the community partners group, long-range planning, smart school spending, 11 Lords Leaping. It's the thing that came to mind. Who am I missing? SAG, yes. So there are groups now that exist that we're working with to do things. There might be, though, an opportunity to do a couple of other things. Student ambassador group, where I can think of a couple of students now that would be so great to lead that. But that is a group of students, it's kind of like SAG, but maybe a little bit different, but moving through the community, doing things, taking an active interest in talking to others about their experience. Maybe it would be more intentional around one specific kind of thing. I'm not sure, just an idea there. And alumni engagement, that one is really a no-brainer. There's so many district alumni in this town that are just doing great things. I think we just need to start that conversation, and people will want to be part of that. And that conversation is about, I went through school here and had all these challenges, and it was great, and now my kids are here, and it's something that's always evolving that we want to be part of. I just think that's an easy one for us to do.
We do that with a quarter for sure.
Yep. And groups like that want to take it, the district doesn't have to be running all of these things. This is to your point, Jimmy, give somebody an idea and provide support and content maybe, and then just let it go and see what happens. But there are just so very many alumni here that I can think of their testimonials and how great that would be to help us. So I think that is the last slide. So there's a lot that I didn't cover, but I'm hoping that you have an idea a little bit of kind of how we're thinking about communications and engagement. And we're definitely thinking about marketing too. I just want to hold that conversation until we can spend some time really digging into it. So with that, are there any questions you have? And let the record show it is 5:45.
I guess I don't have a question, just a comment. I mean, I just see the communications aspect just so entwined in our strategic plan. And in order for this plan to be successful, it just really is key to the work that you and your team throughout are really doing. So thank you for that. So I don't know if there's additional questions or.
Not a question, but I just want to give you all praise because the things that we as parents keep us up at night, I mean, you are on top of it. I can't. It's not like my grandma had, that's for sure. So you take a lot of the guessing work out of it and you're so on top of it. So thank you for that. You got your hands.
That's good to hear.
You know, your work cut out for you with doing all this with you and your team, but
Yeah,
it'll be critical.
it's good stuff. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there somebody that's next or?
Thanks. Actually, it's just future dates coming up. So we've got our actual monthly board meeting is on Monday, the 12th. And then following that, the 19th through the 20th is ISBA's Day on the Hill. And Trustee McAndrew will be at that. And then all of us together will be in Texas, 23rd through the 25th. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. Adjourned. Thank you, and thanks, everyone.
Yes, thank you all.
Thanks.